Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Vimba. I hope you've both had a wonderful weekend.
Good morning, Adefemi. Ayo's with us as well.
Good morning, Adefemi. How are you today?
Hi, Ayo! Good. I'm so happy to hear your voice.
So good to see you. So great to see you. So tell us what's happening around the world today.
All righty, let me tell you what is happening around the world. Now, the World Brief today is going to stay with one person, and one person in particular. That is, of course, US President Donald Trump. Firstly, let's start with the fact that today is the 4-year anniversary of the January 6th insurrection. If you remember, on the 6th of January 2021, thousands of people were incited by the words of Donald Trump into an insurrection, a huge riot that took place at the US Capitol. Many people feeling as though Donald Trump at that point, who had just lost an election to current President Joe Biden, they felt as though the election had been taken from him unfairly, that he was the true winner, and as a result, in their belief of democracy and a revolution, they tried to overrun the Capitol building, breaking into the building, causing damage, injuring police officers, and threatening lawmakers. As we know, Nancy Pelosi was definitely a target for many of the people of that violent crowd. Now, as we know, in the years since then, some 1,500 people were involved in terms of them having a legal ramification for their involvement. And of those 1,500 people, there were 1,250 people who either pled guilty or were convicted for their involvement in the insurrection. And they received a whole spectrum of penalties and punishments, ranging from days in prison to 20 years in prison. Now, the lion's share of these people, the vast majority of them, definitely feel as though they were motivated in support of and in defense of President-elect Donald Trump. So 4 years on from January 6, 2021, Donald Trump is preparing to be inaugurated in 2 weeks, just 2 Mondays from now. Donald Trump is expected to be inaugurated, and there are going to be a lot of people behind bars who are anticipating a pardon coming from the new president. Now, this is something that Donald Trump talked a lot about during the campaign, that he would be very interested in pardoning these people, that he would issue pardons even as early as the first day of his presidency. As it stands, it's not clear whether or not he's going to follow through with that pledge, with that promise, whether or not it's going to be a blanket pardon for all of the people, all 1,250 people who were involved in the insurrection, or whether or not he's going to look at this as a case-by-case basis. But that's definitely something that many people are going to be paying attention on in the immediate aftermath of his inauguration. Now, talking about that inauguration, Donald Trump has already talked about how he's not too happy about the fact that flags will be flown at half-mast. Now, if you imagine, naturally, when you see a flag of any type of country, they're usually flown at the top of a pole, but sometimes they're flown at half-mast, as you're all aware, as a sign of respect, most especially and most commonly as a sign of a country or a region in mourning. So current US President Joe Biden had ordered that flags be flown at half-mast, at half-staff, depending on where you are in the world, in respect to the dearly departed Jimmy Carter, who lost his life just over a week ago on December 29th at 100 years old. So as a sign of respect, those flags will be flown at half-mast and will stay so during the inauguration. Now, in response to that, Donald Trump says that he's not very happy about that while he understands the symbolism of it, he, taking to Truth Social, talked about how nobody wants this, that it's unfair, that he would be essentially the first president to be inaugurated with the flags of his nation not being flown at full staff, at full mast. So it depends on what side of the argument you're on, whether or not you agree with the President-elect Trump, or whether you agree that as a sign of respect, the flag should stay at half-staff, at half-mast during his inauguration. And then again, our last story this morning's edition of the World Brief is again staying with Donald Trump and knowing that he will be sentenced for his involvement in this hush money trial case on Friday, on January 10th. Now, he had been talking about how he clearly doesn't believe that this is a conviction that should have stuck. He was convicted back in May of 2023 of 34 federal counts relating to this hush money payment to the tune of $130,000 that was paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels. It's something that he believes shouldn't have materialized in court, shouldn't have turned into convictions, but we know it has. And a court in New York says that though it will uphold his conviction and deliver a punishment, it is unlikely that he will face any penalties, especially not any type of custodial sentence coming to this hearing that we're expecting on Friday. The judge has given the president-elect the ability to appear in person or virtually, but again, as it stands, whatever the punishment will be, it will be something that we can imagine that Donald Trump, once he does assume office on the 20th of January, will do his best to dissuade away from his focus as president. Those are your stories on the World Brief this morning. Love to hear your thoughts before we go to the papers.
All right, thank you for that. So, of course, January 6th is significant because it's the day that the Congress meets to certify the victory of the president-elect. And,
Correct,
of course, that's
yes.
the day that, Donald Trump's supporters took over and did the insurrection. But I think it's quite a, today is quite a symbolic day in that people are just looking to see the process that they've always seen happen quite smoothly, in history, and looking to see that process happen smoothly today. But what really got my attention, really, with American politics this weekend was the fact that, the Democrats are in full swing with regards to politicking. I was even reading an article that was saying that the 2028 primaries are all but in name underway, as the Democrats are already getting their house together to figure out which candidate they can start building up over the next 4 years. So, because of the machine that the Democrat Party is, I totally understand why sort of the media is more awash with, the stories that are just trying to dismiss Trump as much as possible as we count down to the days to the inauguration. But this weekend, what really got my attention was the fact that President Joe Biden gave the national honors to George Soros, to Hillary Clinton. George Soros, because we see all of this controversy around and criticism around Donald Trump having Elon Musk, a billionaire friend or ally around him. But you saw George Soros, who is somebody who admittedly aided and abetted the rounding up of Jews during the Holocaust, and said he's not apologetic about it. And he's a key benefactor of the Democrat Party, and he's being given the national honors. So, it just goes to show you that whichever side of the political divide you're on, there's a little bit of double standards playing out on both sides.
All right. This 14 more days to President Donald Trump's inauguration, the 20th, and perhaps this might be the most interesting lead up to the inauguration of a president, or the president of the United States of America. A lot of things happening, and fair enough that we've dedicated today's World Brief to him because there are a lot of stories around him this morning. But I think very importantly for Donald Trump is the relationship, what has been described at best as frosty, between he and President Joe Biden. There's no love lost, definitely, between both of them. And that's why it's a bit, that conversation around the flags flown at half-mast is a bit suspect. Even though, rightly so, they have lost the longest or oldest living former U.S. president in the person of Jimmy Carter, and his funeral procession has begun. He's being given a state funeral, as would be expected. And so you can imagine that that's coming to question. Now, there's nothing that Donald Trump can do about it, because President Joe Biden, as president currently, has the right to make that. He can only change that after he's sworn in. Unfortunately, would still put a little down or a damper on his swearing in. Something else as well is that today is the 6th of January, and also today is the day when Congress is meant to meet to certify Donald Trump's presidency as well. Fortunately, the election.
Correct, yes.
Fortunately for him, he's going to enjoy the courtesy that he didn't give to President Joe Biden in terms of it's going to be quite, we're not expecting any insurrections, we're not expecting any protests, we're not expecting any kind of, President Joe Biden was quite, well, at least as gracious as possibly in accepting defeat and conceding, well, not he, but Kamala Harris, the Democrat, accepting defeat and, giving him, conceding that election to President Donald Trump, whom he won overwhelmingly. So today, hopefully, weather permitting, also to talk about the bad weather going, in North America, the United States and Canada. That's also been very big on the news. There's been flight cancellations, and the UK as well. So I hope you're keeping warm as well. The UK, the United States of America, Canada, flights have been, cancelled. Travel advisory, state of emergencies have been declared in some states in America. So it's really important for people to watch out there. So there are concerns that some members of Congress might not even show up today as a result of bad weather. But all in all, we keep our eyes on, the days, road leading to the inauguration of President Donald Trump come 20th of January, 2025. I see we've been by dancing. All right, all the best to him.
Well, President Donald Trump may be displeased with the fact that the flag will fly at half-staff, when he's been inaugurated on January 20. But there is nothing he can do about it. One, it's a prerogative of President Biden to declare 30 days of mourning. And that was established in 1954 when President Dwight D. Eisenhower issued a proclamation in 1954 saying that, when a former president of the United States dies, flags will fly at half-staff in all federal government buildings and grounds, and also in U.S. assets and facilities, be it embassies or military formations all over the world. And that has been the tradition since 1954. Now, President Trump himself should know that. So there's nothing he can do about it. But although he issued a statement saying that, well, he may disagree philosophically with President Carter, but he respects the fact that he's one president who tried to make America better. And for that reason, he has his highest respect. So, this thing is cast in stone. The funeral obsequies have begun since January 4 with the procession in Plains, Georgia, the hometown of President Carter. On January 9, there's going to be state funeral, and there will be line of state, at the Capitol, and then the funeral service at the Washington National Cathedral. President Trump is expected to be in attendance. Will he be there? That remains to be seen. The second thing about his case, now Judge Joan Merchan, having taken a decision on this particular case, said sentencing will be on July 11. Now it was postponed again from July 11 to late November. On November, in the first week of November, President Trump won the presidency. So that changed things a bit. Trump's lawyers have been saying the case should be dismissed outright. But Judge Merchan last Friday said no, he will not dismiss the case outright. He would give the sentencing on January 10. But what he's talking about is what he calls an unconditional discharge. In other words, President Trump may be convicted, fine, probation, 4 years imprisonment. That's what it requires. But that's not going to happen. He's going to unconditionally discharge him. But in the state of New York, once a man is convicted, he will need to submit his DNA to the state crime bank. So you are likely to have, by January 20, a man being sworn in as president who is a convicted felon. And would that make, it constitutional? Now, the Supreme Court has said, if you perform an act that is related to your functions as president, you'll be forgiven. Stormy Daniels' case, is it related to his function as president? The answer is no. However, his lawyers have said they will fight to the end. But they cannot fight until he's sentenced. So that will have to, the case will still have to go to the Supreme Court after he's already president. The second leg is, can he pardon himself? The answer is no. State pardon only relates to federal charges, not to state matters. In this particular case, it's state matters. Finally, today is the fourth anniversary of January 6, 2021, when thousands of men and women stormed the Capitol, beating up 140 policemen who were injured, killing 5 people, ruffling up offices, and even threatening to hang Vice President Mike Pence, who said he will not do the bidding of Donald Trump. Well, it's now another January 6th for certification. Well, today is different because Trump's election has not caused any unnecessary uproar. 500 policemen have been deployed. The black fence is up to provide protection. The National Guard is on full alert in case it is called upon, but we do not expect that anything will happen today as happened 4 years ago. Well, Donald Trump in 2021 was the man who instigated the insurrection. And many are asking that, okay, if you instigated insurrection, should you have the constitutional right to be president again? The second point is that he told ABC News, Meet the Press, or is it NBC, and he granted interview saying that his first day assignment will be to pardon the 1,250 persons out of the 1,600 that were charged, who were convicted. He will grant them pardon. But Marjorie Greene, a Republican representative from Georgia, is saying this should be a case-by-case basis because there were persons who destroyed things, who killed things, particularly, these people who call themselves good boys, the good boys, that, look, if it's a case-by-case basis, those who committed violence and injured people, they should be allowed to serve their term, which runs from days to 22 years. But President Trump says, well, these people have suffered long and hard enough. So we wait to see what he will do with the pardon. You recall when President Biden pardoned people, he was saying hi about the January 6 people who should also be pardoned. So we wait to see on that score.
We will. Thank you very much for all of your analysis there. Definitely going to be a very interesting time looking at US politics. Also, we do know that current US Vice President Kamala Harris will be the person presiding over the ratification of these election results, just in a twisted fate of irony that we're seeing in US politics. We'll be keeping our eyes across all of it all. But let's move on to newspapers this morning. And we start, of course, with the front page of This Day. This Day, as you've already mentioned, starts with the conversation of Taiwo Oyedele, who's been talking about the implementation of this tax reform bill, and essentially says that the governors who said that they've been left out and not been brought along weren't being completely honest when it comes to what has happened, what they have experienced when it comes to the presidential committee on this tax reform bill, being able to explain what they're trying to implement with this bill. Essentially, what Oyedele has said is that there has been a series of appointments with the Nigerian Governors Forum, with Nigerian governors that haven't materialized because the governors have cancelled those appointments on 4 separate occasions. So just to explain and underscore that they have been doing their hardest when it comes to bringing governors along, essentially, but they have not been able to have that materialize into what they are looking forward to. Let's move on to the front page of the New Telegraph this morning. And the New Telegraph this morning looks at how there is a consortium of northern politicians, northern leaders essentially, who are hoping to come together and create their own democratic front, their own political party. And they have called upon different members of in terms of Nigerian leaders to the south of the country to join forces with them and create this new political party. It's something that's also taken place and reported on the front page of The Punch this morning. The Punch also takes a lead at this story and about how these different groups of people are trying to put together a different political party. In addition to that, we also know that on different papers this morning, we also see a host of other stories. Essentially, if we move on now to the Daily Independent, that's picked up on the formation, as I said, of this new party, as Northern Democrats reportedly are trying to woo Southern politicians. As I said, their picture headline also on the Daily Independent this morning has President Tinubu alongside the Awujale of Ijebuland, Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetona, who visited the president at his residence in Lagos this weekend. Moving on to the Nigerian Guardian this morning, and that focuses on the fresh agitation growing as states across the country are struggling to execute this new minimum wage amount. I mean, we call it new, but it's been the case for the past 6 months, since July 2023 or thereabout. And unfortunately, if we look at the 6 months since the 70,000 naira minimum wage was brought into effect, it has lost its value considerably. And when we look at adjusting this naira amount for basic food items, it has lost about 1/3 of its value since July, when that law was initially passed. So very, very sad times ahead for many people who are even yet to receive this increased minimum wage amount. Let's move on to the Daily Trust this morning, and that leads with the finding of its own investigation into the state of Nigeria's electricity sector, and power projects worth over 2 trillion naira have not been completed or were simply awarded but yet to start in different parts of the country. Do recall that the power sector was allocated some 2.087 trillion naira in the 2025 appropriation bill presented to the National Assembly in December by the President. And finally, the Punch, if we take a look at the Punch again, the Punch is leading on the federal government, saying that it will activate surveillance measures for inbound passengers coming in from China because they are growing concerned about a new respiratory virus called HMPV that has been going through China and different areas of Far East Asia, including Taiwan and Hong Kong. And because of the influx of passengers coming into Nigeria from that country, federal government says it's keeping a special eye on there. To Kenya now, and the Daily Nation appears to be focusing on the country's education sector. Many children are going back to school after Christmas holidays, and they're talking about how schools across different institutions are yet to receive their monies from the federal government, how parents are unable to buy textbooks for their children because of a shortage of textbooks. Just essentially a whole model going on in Kenya. And then moving on to the United Kingdom, we see that The Guardian leads with Elon Musk again wading into British politics. This time he's saying that Reform UK needs a new leader, claiming that Nigel Farage isn't really the right person for the job. If you remember, a few days ago he talks about how Tommy Robinson, who is a very prominent, infamous far-right activist in the United Kingdom, he felt that Tommy Robinson would be a better leader for the Reform Party. Tommy Robinson is currently in prison because he was held in contempt of court. He's serving an 18-month sentence because he repeatedly spread and talked about a Syrian refugee, spreading misinformation essentially. So he's in prison. So I can't imagine why Elon Musk thinks that he would be a better leader for the Reform Party. But just another example of the state of the world when it comes to right-wing policy. And then finally, The Independent looks at the 5-year anniversary of Brexit. It's been 5 years since that divorce deal was done, where the United Kingdom formally removed itself from the European Union, and they're looking at the true cost of it. Now, according to the Treasury of the United Kingdom, the cost of the divorce was some £30 billion, and 1.2 million EU residents have left the United Kingdom between 2016 to 2021. And finally, there's been a £27 billion drop in goods exports to the UK since 2022 alone. So a lot of anniversaries there, Brexit being the one that we're talking about on the front page of The Independent. Those are your papers from Nigeria to the African continent to the United Kingdom. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Adefemi. And interesting that you talk about just highlighting the fact that it would be VP Kamala Harris herself who would be certifying the election that she ran and lost, against Donald Trump. Traditionally or constitutionally in the United States of America, the vice president is the head of the Senate, and the president of the Senate is the one who certifies. And so today we're going to see that happen again. Last time this happened was in 2000 when Al Gore of the Democratic Party ran against George Bush at the time. Thank you so much for your time this morning.